Hello, everybody, back again. Okay, so I've been off on my travels and had some time off. So this is the first one I've done in a few weeks. Others that you've seen were pre-recorded. So a few questions come in, and this one is about how to grieve. It's a great question. A lot of people have no idea what that might look like or how to go about it. Stay tuned to the end because I'm going to give you very practical ways of grieving. And for me, it's got to be practical, something you can do, something you can actually teeth into. So if you're struggling with grief and you've clicked onto this, then hang in there, wait to the end, give you some ways, actually ways to help you manage that grief. Okay, we can't talk about grief because we're talking about the first 7 years of your life. I'm going to be like you got conditions, you got programmed, right? You taught about emotions, but not appreciated by your godlike figures in your life, your parents, then you would have learnt to repress, deny, and avoid. A lot of us did that. It's just the way we were brought up. It was just society, and that's what we were taught to do. So I've got a prop today. See, look, my little pink heart. And so when we talk about emotions, we're talking about your heart space, your little heart inside your body. So growing up, if you were taught that your heart space, your emotions that live in your heart space, no, don't be crying. I'll give you something to cry about. Don't you dare be angry with me. I'll stop being misery guts. Oh, for goodness sake, what's the matter with you? Look what you've got to be. You've got food on your plate. You should feel grateful. Okay, so if you got a lot of that, and most of us did, most of us do, and not because we got terrible parents trying to socialize us here on the planet Earth, right? So the planet Earth, we get on with things, and we have to go and put food on the table and pay bills, and we can't be messing around with all those emotions. So very early on, you got conditioned, repress, deny, and avoid. Now, so you can get on with your life. It wasn't a bad thing, but sometimes if we even know our own reality, and a lot of us didn't, I know I didn't know how I felt. And the first time I ever lost, which was at the ripe old age of 19, which was pretty good. I hadn't lost anyone in my life significantly in my life until that age. And at 19, I had a boyfriend have a head-on collision and die instantly. Actually, I cried, and I could hear my brain go, how am I supposed to feel? How should I feel? Didn't know my own reality. So you can't really talk about grief because grief is about knowing thyself, knowing how you're feeling in any given moment. Well, I was taught, and conditioned, not just by parents, by the world, by media, by um, teachers, repress, deny, and avoid, or rationalize my emotions, intellectualize my emotions. So we're all being taught, deal with this any way you can, repress, deny, and avoid, or intellectualize it and rationalize it. But when it comes to grief, so this is why grief is a wonderful opportunity to actually really do some work. And what I mean by that is learn how to manage your emotions in a way that maybe you haven't before. So it's about teaching you how to manage your emotions. And at the end, I will be giving you some real practical ways of doing that. About what you were taught growing up. What did you get taught about emotions? No, I remember I had this experience when I was 6 or 7. I was very young, but obviously 6 or 7 is the age where you're getting to know cognitive understanding, have more conscious awareness. And I watched this film called The Birdman of Alcatraz with Burt Lancaster. The little girl was so sad. I remember bawling my eyes out. Well, I'm just coming into that time where I'm understanding consciousness. And my 2 older sisters just teased me because I was crying. And I, this deep humiliation, deep shame around my tears. So this is how we get taught. It's very subtle. It's not meant by anyone. They didn't mean to do that. They're just being kids, teasing their little sister. But the message I got was, I felt humiliated. So my emotions, my tears, God, no, repress, deny, and avoid. Because I don't want to feel humiliated again. So I best not express and my emotions. Now, that's what's happening to us all the time from every which way. And so, why? We don't want to feel vulnerable. We don't want to feel humiliated and stupid and feel embarrassed. And so, not cry again. That's set up because I remember it's funny when I look back, I remember I said I'm never going to cry again. And crying was always a source of deep shame and humiliation and embarrassment. I cried, I felt really bad. So, of course, I repress, deny, and avoid. That's what we do. And so, this is how we're all conditioned early on. And we have to wake up to that and realize that this part is who you really are. I said to you, point to yourself. Just point to yourself. So, where did you point? This is who I am? No, this is who I am. This is what makes you a human being. It should just be a body with a head and you'd be probably a robot. This is what makes us being kind, compassionate, human beingness is all about this. And so if early on we get told to repress, and that's why we can't talk about grief until we've talked about this, because this is what we've all been told to do. Repress, deny, and avoid. And if you haven't got a bloody good reason for your tears, then shut up. Like a lot of people, as a kid, emotional beings, which means we haven't got the ability to repress, deny, and avoid. We're not fully conscious yet. That doesn't happen to sort of 6, 7, that kind of age. And so, you go to your mum and go, why are you crying? Why are you crying? There's a judgment in that. Unless you've got a bloody good reason, then stop with the crying. So, do that to ourselves. They do it to us, and then we do it to us. Well, why am I crying? Well, I just feel sad. This is an emotion. And you see, feelings aren't rational and they're not logical. And sometimes they don't make sense. But feelings aren't also facts. Just because you feel something doesn't mean it's true. So we have to be able to, and this is what I'm going to you to do, manage this the same way I had to learn to manage this and stop seeing my emotions, I think, to be deeply ashamed of. Because when we're ashamed and we feel embarrassed, I reject that emotional part of me. But we can't do that. It's like me saying, I don't like this leg, I'm just going to reject it. Well, you can't reject your body no more than you can reject the emotional part of you. Try, and that's what people end up depressed and, suicidal. Because the front of your brain, that neocortex, is to keep you from emotional pain. So your brain will come in, if you're having lots of uncomfortable feelings, your brain will come in and tell you how to get rid of those emotional feelings, that pain. And the brain will say, well, why don't you just take yourself out? Why don't you just kill yourself? And then you won't have any of that pain. You see, your brain is working against you at times because your brain is trying to keep you from emotional pain. And so my brain said to me, cry will embarrass you. People will laugh at you. People will think you're stupid. And so reject, deny, and avoid that pain. So repress it. Can you see that what you've been taught about your emotions is the most important thing when it comes to grief? Because when you lose someone, like I lost a boyfriend when I was 19, tragic car accident, straight on, recently, and initially cried, but then I honestly didn't really know how to feel. I didn't know how I felt. I'd been so busy. And this is the trouble with human beings. We are very habitual and we will do something till it becomes very unconscious. I wasn't aware that I'm repressing my feelings. I'm repressing them because that's how I survived. I want to feel safe, feel safe environment and not get or bullied or picked on or told I was silly for crying. I didn't want to feel those feelings. So can you see why repress, deny, and avoid? If I keep doing repress, deny, and avoid, then initially I will disconnect from my emotional space and I won't know how I feel. Kind of put it in the deep freeze, wrapped it in bandages, and now I can't really connect to it. I'm not really sure how I feel. And so when you're talking about grieving, it's about being able to process the pain inside your heart because it's been ripped in two. Because, you know, grief is something you can't think away, intellectualize away, and you often can't repress and deny it. It's right here in front of you. And so I did what probably a lot of people do. I said, well, I don't know what to do with this. And believe me, my head came in and said, oh, well, you could kill yourself. And then hopefully, and thankfully, another part of my brain went, don't be ridiculous. And I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to feel this pain. And I didn't know how to take care of it or cope with it. I kind of repressed it and put it in a box and put the lid on it and put it into my psychic body, maybe stuck it in the dungeon, as I say sometimes. We put things way deep down inside our beings. Really deal with it for years and years and years, and it stayed in there. And that's the trouble. And then have another grief. Do is you start to compound the grief, the loss, and the pain. The only way you can process pain is through the heart. Process it through the head. You can't process it through your legs or your muscles. Do that. Pain has to be processed through the emotional center of your being, which is your heart space. So if I've got it in the dungeon, then I'm not able to process it. And of course, got another grief, another grief. What to do is compound it. The biggest is when people come in and they say, you know what, if I start crying, I'm never going to stop. Because maybe they've got all this compounded grief and it feels so big and so overwhelming that this is busting at the seams. I haven't been able to pressing it because it's like the ball under the water. It keeps coming up. And really, that's what PTSD is. See, your body is a self-healing mechanism, but we create these ways of being, repress, deny, and avoid, to survive, to cope, to manage. So it's not because of any other reason. You just wanted to try and stay safe, but it's not working for you. Habitual repress, deny, and avoid. So grief comes along and smacks you in the face, tears your heart in two, but you can't think it away and you can't run away and you can't disconnect and you can't intellectualize or rationalize it because it's just this inside your heart. Now, we're all unique, we're all different. And how we grieve times very unique and different. For example, when my 94-year-old grandmother died, I didn't feel that sad. Okay, let's take sadness on a scale of 1, 2 sad, 10 being, oh my gosh, heart rendering sad. Scale of 1 to 10, I was probably a 2 or a 3. Never actually cried. Now, people might think because you didn't care, but the thing I told you about, because I didn't worry about my kids, thought I didn't care about them. So if I'm not sad, then does that mean I didn't care about her? No, no, but we're all different, okay? There's no rhyme or reason. I actually didn't. She was 94 years old. She'd lived a long life. She'd lived independently. She was only just starting to lose, hearing and sight and struggling. And her last day was Christmas Day. We had amazing time at our place. She had a great big Christmas Day dinner, and she was a bit tired afterwards and a bit sort of dozing off. Next day she went into hospital and not long after she passed away, and I didn't feel sad at all. It was a celebration of a long life, and it was went to the funeral. Now, different people dealt with that different. Some people did cry, and that's okay. You have to feel like I do, and I don't have to feel like you do. And so I'm giving you some experiences of my sadness because I think it's very interesting. I went to a friend, like a friend, we were a part of a church and he went to that church. I didn't know him. I'd spent a bit of time with him, so I knew of him. And he died. And initially I didn't feel overwhelmingly sad. I certainly didn't cry. I just thought, wow, that's tragic. He died of a heart attack. He was same age as me, so this was a few years ago. I'm not exactly sure. But so he was in his 50s, 55, that kind of age. So it was tragic, I mean, gosh, kids that were like older, so 20s. It was like, I'm that age, I could just drop down dead. So yeah, it's shocking. Went to the funeral. I wasn't worried. I wasn't concerned. I sat right at the back, not for any reason. It's just because it was busy. It was packed. Literally sobbed time. Not loud, loud sobs. Quiet, sort of shuddering sobs. I think I stopped if I tried. Those kind of sobs, and it was silent sobbing, but my whole body was shaking, and I was just going through tissue after tissue, and my heart just felt so sad. Now I don't know why. Ask it why. Just allowed it to emote in a way that it felt it needed to emote. Now, I could have said, oh, well, why are you crying? This is more than it should be. You hear the should. He's not that good a friend. Like, would you be doing that? So my head could have come in and said a lot of that. Actually, put pretty good. My mind, one thing you can control, tame the wild beast that is the mind. And so I didn't buy any of that. I just acknowledged, allowed my heart to feel the pain of that. Now, once that funeral was over, I went outside. I stopped crying, um, and I was fine. Feel sad. I didn't want to cry after that. That was quite interesting. I was just curious about how my body responded in that moment. The next grief I think I experienced was my daughter, who was 12 at the time. Her best friend died in her sleep. I She hadn't spent a lot of time with this little girl. Her mum wouldn't let her really come over and stay. She was very protective of her. And so my daughter tended to go there. So it's not like I knew her well and I'd got this bond with her. But of course, I was thinking about the poor parent, and I've got a daughter who's 12, so I was uh, identifying with her parents and how they would feel and thinking how I would feel if my daughter had died. And I honestly, this pain in my heart that I've never felt that pain, that sadness, 10 out of 10, right? Now I knew intellectually, I knew it wasn't my daughter. My heart having other ideas about that, and it absolutely bereft. Most deepest, saddest pain I've ever felt over someone who died. And I didn't judge it. I really didn't. I just thought, oh, well, this is how my heart is feeling. I mean, I didn't like it, of course. Who does? But I'm just going to allow myself to feel it. But, I had to work. It's not like it was my daughter. I wasn't. So I went to work. And every night for 2 weeks, laid on the bed, came home from work, and I just held my heart gently. And if I wanted to cry, I cried. Or if I wanted to feel sad, I did. I didn't let the head come in and say, oh, well, you shouldn't be feeling this way. Because why shouldn't I be feeling this way? Who says my heart is feeling this way? Telling it shouldn't be feeling this way didn't make any difference. After 2 weeks of doing that, she didn't need to do it again. And that sadness had lifted. The sadness had moved through me because I'd allowed it, I'd given it space and time, held it gently and tenderly, I'd nurtured that feeling that I was having, and passed and it processed through and out of my heart. And after 2 weeks, now obviously, if that had been my daughter, it'd have been a lot longer, but it wasn't. I thought it was interesting because I was see, judgmental and curious at the same time. So I was actually pretty curious about the intensity of the pain I had inside of me because this was a huge pain. I wasn't running away from that. I couldn't. And so, somebody might look at me and go, "Oh, well, you shouldn't be that sad." I'm like, "Well, I feel that sad, right?" So this is where we do not honor our own emotions, and we certainly don't honor other people's. What the hell am I to say to you, shouldn't feel this pain? I think one of the things I have found really hard is when people come in and they have a lot of grief, and they often come to a therapist when they have a lot of grief around a pet. Because there's one time when people will say, well, it was only just a dog or it was only just a cat. And I get so mad because I feel like, oh, how could they say that to anybody? Because what they're saying is they're invalidating the way you feel. Well, you know what? Might not make much sense, but this is how I feel. So fluff off. This is how you feel. And if you don't honour how you feel, then who else is going to? It's not anybody's job to honour how you feel. It's your job to honour how you feel. Now, this might not make sense. It'll be rational or logical. It doesn't matter. Your job is to take responsibility for your heart and your emotions if they don't make sense. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a difference between repress, deny, and avoid and mollycoddle. I'm talking about you mollycoddling your feelings, being sorry for yourself. That's just victim. I'm talking about being a loving, nurturing to this part of you. This is your responsibility. And your job is to hold it, acknowledge it, take care of it, into it, hold it, come through for it. So, how do you do that? How do you change habits of a lifetime? How do you change what was ingrained, conditioned, brainwashed for 7 years? Well, first of all, you have to acknowledge there is an emotional part of you, and it's your job to take responsibility. Your response, your responsibility. This is my response. And so, if I'm in pain because someone I loved deeply has died, then obviously I'm going to feel a lot of pain. But what you do with it and how you manage it is key for healthy grieving. Let's call it that. Let's talk about a parent. Now, it's complicated because everything is subjective. So maybe you adored your parent, you loved them, always there for you, they were supportive, they were loving, they were your best, supporter. They, go all they were there for you. You loved spending time with them. They were consistently loving, kind, caring towards you. And so when that parent dies, how do you think your emotions are going to feel? You're going to feel bereft. You're going to feel like, oh my God, something's missing. Life's never going to be the same again, blah, 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 blah. Like you're going to feel devastated. Of course you are. The danger is when you think you can't cope with it. That's what a lot of fear is about. I can't cope. Well, the fact is, you will cope. You do cope. You've survived everything you've gone through up until this point because you're still here, right? So cope with that? Well, first of all, you acknowledge that's how you feel, and you have every right. Your pain is an honouring of that relationship. Say you didn't like your parents. Say you didn't talk to them. Say you were estranged from them. Say you were, they didn't treat you very nicely. They were cruel and harsh and judgmental and, abusive. Well, how's your heart going to feel then? You see, you might feel a lot of feelings, sadness, anger, relief. How are you going to manage that? And this is why it gets tricky and complicated because I think, if you've got a really old parent that's struggling and they actually die, you might actually feel relief. Maybe they've got dementia, they're kind of losing, their capabilities to think clearly. And so actually when they die, it's actually a real relief because they're not suffering anymore. Well, and this is where we've got to really watch this. What does that say about me? If I'm relieved, does that tell me I'm a bad person? Shoulding all over yourself. Well, I should be sad. I shouldn't feel relief. What does that say? Well, it doesn't say anything about you. This is just what it is. It feels certain feelings, and they can come and go. Sometimes you might feel relief, and sometimes you might feel sad, and sometimes you might feel angry. Interesting, when someone I knew on the peripheral of my world, someone I actually spend a lot of time with, but I knew of them, actually took their own life, and I felt really angry. And a lot of people struggle when people die if they feel angry. But I'm a therapist, so I knew that it's okay. I'm feeling angry. So I was curious. I was curious about the anger. I went to my therapist and said, look, this is how I'm feeling. She's brilliant. She was honoring. So, dug a bit deeper into that. What's going on for you? What's going on? what do you think that anger's about? And so we did some work, and she gave me some homework, and I processed that anger and I worked through it. In fact, I haven't. See, when you process pain inside your heart, your mind will put it in long term memory and it won't have it. When you be thinking about something, that is a sign that your heart hasn't healed from it. If you're constantly thinking about something that happened 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, then that's because your heart hasn't healed from it, and your mind is sending you a reminder not to harm you or talk to you, but to help you realize, oh, I'm still holding energy in my heart about that situation. And that's why, as a therapist, you know that if someone comes in and says, they start telling you their issues and they talk about a dad that passed 20 years ago and they're still very, very upset, very emotional, that's probably because it hasn't been healed in the emotional center, because you can only heal it in the emotional center. So grief is complex, it makes sense, and you can't rationalize, intellectualize, or repress, deny, and avoid it. It's just part of life here on the planet, and this is what you signed up for. And that's what human beings are all about. And so what do you do with it? So we can talk about this. It could be a pet, it could be an animal, it doesn't matter. You've got to honor what your heart is emoting. I've worked with a few clients who have come in because their dogs have died and they are bereft. And after a couple of weeks, it's okay for the first couple of days, you're crying and sobbing, people kind of let you get away with that. But if it goes on and on, people are like, look, it's only a dog, what's your problem? And then you're like, oh, you don't know what to do with it. So what do? You repress, deny, and avoid it. Or you try and pretend it's not there, but, it ekes out because you're, lying on the bed bawling your eyes out every night or something. So, and people are like, what's wrong with you? And so that's why I think it's can be more tricky if it's an animal, because we have this sense of, oh, well, yes, cry for a couple of weeks, but then you kind of should be good. And if you're not, then, oh, there's something wrong with me. No, there's nothing wrong with you. You're probably just not really healing the pain. You're probably feeling it and then kind of not knowing what to do with it. So then you're repressing it. So you let it come up, but then you kind of, nah, that's it. That's enough now. And so, but you're not actually really healing it. And I'm going to explain what that might look like. Just move the mic. Okay, is this making sense? I've got to have a cup of tea. Okay, hopefully. So someone's died. You're in a lot of pain. And it's good to be able to measure that pain, because then it rate the pain. Right now, my pain is 10. Okay, so this is the homework I want to give you. Because I believe that, yes, when you're falling apart all day, trying not to cry all day, when you're in, a lot of pain, it's really hard to function. What I'd like to say to people is I want you to put a boundary around your grieving. Because if you've got kids and you've got a house to clean and places to go, things to do, a lot of people can't afford to take a lot of time off work to grieve, so they have to keep going. And so this is good for like that. If you're not working, then it can be a bit different. But say, for example, you've got kids and you've got to get up, get them off to school, make beds, maybe you've got to work as well. Who knows what you've got going on? Then I want you to give yourself permission to get on with your life, but then before you go to bed, maybe go to bed a bit earlier, an hour was earlier. If it's really intense, maybe an hour. If it's not too intense, maybe half an hour. And we're going to put a boundary around it. So what that means is get on with your day, but then you're going to tell your body, your heart, that at 9 o'clock we are going to bed, and I'm going to be with you to hold you in this place. So the time. So that's what I mean by a boundary. You set a time every day, and before bed is great, because then if you cry, you can cry yourself to sleep. And so this is what I want you to do. I want you to grab a cushion. You can grab something like this. You can grab a teddy bear or a cushion or something that you can hold, right? And I want you to sit on the side of the bed, and I want you to hold the cushion, and I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine all the pain in your heart seeps that cushion or that pillow or that teddy. Yeah? I just want you to allow, it's like a sponge, and it's kind of, and you're pushing that pain into that. And now feel like it's in you and in the cushion. That's okay. It doesn't have to all be in the cushion and out of you. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just letting you feel the pain move into that thing, whatever you're holding. And then I want you to close your eyes. I want you to just breathe in and breathe out and focus into that cushion. And I want you to hold that cushion pillow as if you're holding the most precious thing in the world. And I want you to just gently hold it like it's a precious diamond, kitten, a puppy, or even a baby. So I want you to hold it gently, tenderly. And this is what I want you to say, not out loud, just very quietly, gently, tenderly inside your mind. And I want you to speak to the cushion, the pillow, whatever it is, the teddy. I want you to say to it, it's okay for you to feel this way. I'm right here with you. Everything's going to be okay. I love you. You're my responsibility, and everything is going to be okay. Now, at this point, you might want to cry, so let yourself cry. Imagine that all those tears are being poured out, and that cushion, that part of that cushion, is the thing that's crying, and you're holding it. And I just want you to continue doing exactly that, just holding it gently and tenderly. Now, at this point, you could lay down. At this point, you could climb into bed. And I want you to keep holding that cushion and just telling it exactly what we said. It's okay. I'm right here for you. And you have every right to feel this way. And I'm right here with you. You're not alone. And I love you. And everything's going to be okay. It's safe for you to feel this. And just keep doing that. Maybe you fall asleep like that. But just do it for as long as you can. You're going to sleep anyway. You're in bed. You're in the best place. And I want you to do that every day, every single night for the next 2 weeks. Okay, now that's something that's homework if you're in a lot of pain, like this happened just recently and you're really struggling. If it's something that pops up every now and again, so it's not every day you feel like that, I want you to commit to doing that 3 times a week. You choose the days, you choose the time. Now, if you're not working and you've got no kids and you're free to just do that, you can do that when you wake up in the morning. You remember that split second when you wake up and you've forgotten that that person's not here anymore, or that pet's not here. And all of a sudden you wake up and then you remember and then you feel it. So if you're in bed and that's what happens, then do exactly what I said, but do it in the morning. And give yourself, if you've got plenty of time, an hour, 2 hours at the most. And if you want to bawl your eyes out in that 2 hours, I want you to give yourself permission. The only thing I'm going to tell you to do is you have to hold it gently, tenderly, and speak to it lovingly. Not all the time. You don't have to say words all the time. You can just sit there and hold it. But as you're holding it, you just gently say, it's okay. You're safe. It's okay to feel the way. I love you and I'm here for you. And you're not alone. And everything's going to be okay because I've got you. And what I mean by putting a boundary around it is if you do that in the morning, then 2 hours, if you can afford 2 hours, if you're still crying, then go 3. After that, you're going to go, okay, that's it. enough now. You're going to put the cushion down and you're going to get on with your day. But you tell this cushion, this teddy, whatever it is, that we're going to do exactly the same on Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, or we're going to do it every night until we don't need to do it anymore. That's my commitment to you. And so obviously this is subjective and you've got to work it out at your own pace and you've got to trust yourself. I'm telling you, if you do this and see through your own experience, don't just believe what I'm saying. Let your experiences prove that this works. So maybe today it's 10 out of 10, right? This is why I want you to rate it. Okay, 10 out of 10. Oh my God, this pain is overwhelming. It's unbearable. After a week, I want you to rate it. Is it still 10 out of 10? Maybe it's 9.5. After 2 weeks, rate it. Is it still 10 out of 10? Hopefully, as you allow this part of you to feel what it feels, then that number should go down. Just try it for yourself. What have you got to lose? You're in pain, you've tried everything else perhaps. Because what we do is we'll eat it away, we'll drink it away, we will sex it away, we'll shop it away. We want to do anything, but this is a commitment to you. This is a commitment to the part of you, this emotional part, this heart space that feels the pain. And so as you embrace it and move towards it and allow it, and you commit to doing that every day until you don't need to do it anymore. Or maybe, not every day, but then it goes down to 3 times a week or once a week or once a month or once every, but you do it and then see what happens. See what happens. So what I'm teaching you to do here is to embrace it, acknowledge it, not repress and deny it, and not mollycoddle it. Oh, you poor baby. Because a lot of people will, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. The other thing I want to remind you is do not let this get into it, because you have to control this. You have to master this mind. You have to master, you have to manage this, control this, take care of the body. And you master the system. And when you've done that, you will feel like you're actually living life on your terms instead of everybody else's. This is freedom. This is taking back power. This is all the stuff we've talked about up till now. The reason a lot of people feel depressed and anxious is because they haven't taken responsibility for their heart space. And so when they emote and they get rejected, you reject yourself. Well, this part feels very anxious and afraid, not seen, not heard, not understood. No one's acknowledging or validating how they feel. And so the more you do this, you embrace, you take responsibility, and you do it consistently every single day. What are you learning? You're learning to have a better relationship with your heart space. You're healing. You're feeling more safe inside your own skin. Hopefully that helps you to do your grief work. And just to recap, you commit to doing it a certain amount of time every day if you have to. And then you do it every day. You be consistent. Consistency is a superpower. If you do anything consistency, you will reap the rewards of all of that. If you study, you work out, you eat healthy, you do something consistently, you consistently not let this run the show. You consistently not let those negative thoughts impact on you. You consistently do that and you master the mind. You manage the emotions. You take care of the body. You will start to feel better. So practice it. What have you got to lose? So that is my challenge to you if you're suffering and struggling with grief. Now, there's much more we can talk about because we haven't really talked about complicated grief. Now, complicated grief is perhaps if you've got a parent that you didn't get on with, that you didn't really like, that you did disconnect from. Maybe. So that's a kind of another subject in a way. We're just talking about fairly straightforward grief here, but if it's complex, then more needs to happen. If you want me to talk about that complex grief and how I would work with someone who I believed has got complex grief. Complex grief is just stumbling blocks to grief. That's all it is. It's the things that get in the way of you grieving in a healthy way. Um, because it's like, if you, for example, if you've got resentment towards your parent, if they didn't come through for you, if they weren't there for you, if they weren't loving and kind, then you might get stuck in your grief because there's unfinished business, and that's another conversation. It's probably yeah, I don't really want to do that here. This is just about, if you've got an uncomplicated relationship and you're just feeling sad and grieving because someone's died. But there is maybe I'll do a part two of complicated grief, how to grieve complicated grief. That'll be the next subject. um, anyway, thank you for listening. I have got a few questions. The ones that are coming up, I will do a part two for the grief one. There's also suicide. Someone wanted me to talk about suicide, and someone wanted to talk about boundaries and how to enforce them with family members and friends. So they'll be the next coming videos. I hope you found this helpful. Please share it with other people who you think might be needing some support around grief. Please go get support. Go and see a grief counsellor. Grief, loss and grief counsellors are brilliant. They can really help you work through that. If I get someone, I'll often get them to write letters. We kind of walk towards the grieving process. We don't just wait for it to come and kind of land on us that way. So that's the difference. We can be more proactive with that. But anyway, I hope it helps. I hope you have a lovely day. Take care. I'll see you all again soon next week. Okay, bye for now.